All right, welcome to patreon.com/randomly Ronnie Jr. I wanted to stop down and kind of break down the who, what, where, and why, sort of what I'm about, some of my past work experience, and just my fascination with radio in general. Yes, I am a radio guy, like a radio fanatic, like a radio nerd, they say. And when you've worked in radio as long as I have, I started in the early 2000s. We are a special breed of people and I feel like all the people who love radio the way that I do, we grew up watching talk shows, late night TV, like Johnny Carson, David Letterman. Anytime New Year's Eve was on, it was sort of like an electrifying experience to see the broadcaster. So like I fell in love with broadcast at such a young age. Like this was like the time where, people are thinking about what they want to do with their career. And for me, it was always broadcast. And I always found myself behind a mic, growing up. And even like little things too, like the toilet paper roll, counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, looking at the mirror and sort of pretending you're doing a live talk show. Like that was always me, and it was something that didn't feel attainable. I grew up in Southern California, but in a suburb, and it just didn't feel like an idea that made a lot of sense. Knowing now what I know, I wish it would have been something I started very young, even in the high school era, but it didn't, and that's okay too. And I navigated my experience in media and broadcast by way of Fox Sports Net was one of my internships, and I also was I like to call background talent, but an extra on some shows around Southern California. And those experiences were good, but nothing like radio, nothing like the very first time I started at Clear Channel Los Angeles. Like the world lit up for me. Like as soon as I started KHHT, KIS, KISS FM, those stations, it was like the most electrifying experience. And, you were green and you didn't know anything, but it was really good. And I think it was really good. Things have changed. Now you're a 20-year-old and you could think you know everything. And by way of digital content, you sort of could tell the world that you are. But I love those moments of cutting my teeth young and being green and knowing that I wanted the world, but not knowing how to achieve it. And we had this thing in radio called air checks, and an air check is an experience. Let me tell you, an air check is like the greatest experience because it really is you putting together yourself on tape. And it's either a show you've done or a demo that you're sort of doing, and having, I guess like the powers that be, but the people that really know the industry, having them check out your work. It's a really good experience. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And these are all the experiences I had when I was young. I think I was like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, 20-something-year-old, early 2000s. And when I say that I was working 9 days a week, not 7 days a week, like that is so real because we worked and we had fun. We worked hard, we played hard. And I think to my detriment on some level, because I hit the ground running, before I knew it, I was working at all these different radio stations and moved around a little bit too. Radio stations being Bakersfield, Las Vegas, Riverside, some call-in work, like field correspondent work in San Diego, field correspondent work at KMVN Los Angeles with Rick Dees in the morning, like all of this stuff, moving to Las Vegas, moving to Phoenix, it was all good, but it was all so fast. And I think while I did that, I also transitioned a lot of it into television work, Fuse TV, TLC Network, Santa Monica City TV, American Latino TV, Mundos, like all of these experiences. It was all good and it was all fast. But then what can happen is you could sort of, I don't want to say gas out, but the industry shifts. I remember, now listen to me now, and this is sort of a vulnerable experience too, why coming back to digital content was a challenge, or why Patreon was a challenge. In 2006, 7, and 8, we were early to the monetization party, I guess you would say. Like I must have logged 10,000 hours each year practically in 2006, 2007, 2008. Now, there were still YouTubers that were doing very well at that time, but there was if I could take you back, that was a definitive time. Like back then, you still were pursuing traditional media, traditional radio, traditional television. I had an agent at the time. So while I was, bending over backwards, working so hard within radio, I also had an agent also going to auditions. So it was just a different time. And I will say, like, part of me is like Cry Me a River that, you were before the monetization, but part of me also holds that with the a huge proud badge of honor. Like, yo, you were early to it. You didn't timing wasn't right, but you still did the work, So now I have this great assemblage of work, which has radio, has television, has digital content. And by the time the wave shifted and the landscape shifted, and you could be with no experience, and you can have a hot Instagram page, and sort of that becomes your brand. I had sort of decided around those times to sort of try new things, and for that it wasn't necessarily like boo-hoo, I didn't quote unquote make it, because what is making it, right? You define what making it is. For me, it was more like I had a calling to go to New York City and like have other experiences, and it was a fun time. Like, so it wasn't necessarily like me hanging up my headphones or whatever, or not wanting to continue to pursue radio and TV. It was just more like you gotta try new things. And when I went to New York, not only was I mesmerized by it, and it is true that it is the greatest city in the world, but it was also different experiences within work. Worked a lot of television production, worked America's Got Talent, Married at First Sight, was a producer on Complex on Fuse. It was a show that went on to Fuse TV by way of Complex Media. Podcast at VH1 with Revolver Podcast. It was a joint venture, and I was the podcast producer for that. So like I worked all these really cool experiences, and I really it took a while. Like with all that, I was like, okay, the wave is now sort of like this independent you do it on your own kind of a thing. And I had so many of my colleagues like, oh, Ronnie, you have all this experience with radio. Why don't you get back into it? And for the longest, I did resist. It didn't really feel, I felt like there was a lot of clickbait out there. I felt like there was a lot of like flash in the pan type content. There was a lot of silly games that were, all these things that were winning didn't amuse me. If it was like an environment where all the best content was out there and all the people that I look up to were winning, then I would be totally into it. But it was a lot of people that I did not look up to and they were fooling with the algorithms or whatever, and teach their own. But the content that I wanted to see was not there. And see, now that's the key. I don't want to pat myself on the back, but sometimes you got to. And it took a long time. And I think I was reading several. One thing I do like to do is read the memoirs or the books of like some great broadcast talent. So between Howard Stern's book, Michelle Visage's book, Angie Martinez's book, which I loved, Bevy Smith's book, which I loved, Elvis Duran's book, which I absolutely love, I realized that radio and broadcasters in general, they are the most vivid with their storytelling. And when I was reading all these books and not knowing what the next journey of my life or career would be, I was like, I see something in them that matches to me. And suddenly I had, for all the times where I said, no, I don't really want to do digital because, if you have a great big name, the platforms throw tons of money at you. And if you're, IG famous, also you do well. But the people who really don't do well, you could have a strong resume and have something to bring to the table, and those people have a harder time finding an audience. So it wasn't interesting to me until I read all of those books, specifically like Bevy Smith and Elvis Duran. Like their books really spoke to me, and there was nothing that they said as far as digital content, but their reinvention, their movement, their being innovative. And that is when I was like, I never stopped loving broadcasting. I never did. I always loved it. This was always so fun to me. I just had other things to take care of, other skill sets I wanted to learn. Post-production, I say a lot, post-production is one of the jobs that I just, there's something about it. It's very me. And I just started getting into those worlds, and I just forgot about broadcast, I guess you would say. So I'm using all of these old experiences and I'm putting them in a blender. And now I'm like, ooh, now what we could do is we can put all of that and apply it to your brand within Randomly with Ronnie Jr., the podcast, and the Patreon and the other channel, playlists that you have on the channel, So it really felt like the right time, and it's just so funny to even talk about branding. Branding was something that we learned early on. I used to work with Marky Costello. This is the granddaughter of Lou Costello of, Abbott and Costello, the comedy duo. And it's like she used to talk about branding so long ago. So similar to what I said about, being early to digital content and there wasn't really a lane, we were my group, my colleagues, I guess you would say, my peers, we were all in Marky Costello's class. And of course, I worked with her in her office for about a year and a half. We were so early to branding. So now when people try to talk to me about branding, I'm like, oh, wow. Like I love that it's working for you, but it's like branding isn't necessarily as linear as you, the person broadcasting. It really is about the audience. And so Marky always she always connected, I won't give all the tricks, but she always connected a valuable way to make sure that you were giving to your audience. And I keep that with me. So I guess what I'm saying is, while this was winded, but that's okay. I'm a Virgo perfectionist. We're always going to talk. I knew that it was kind of mixing it all together. I have a moment where eat, sleep, drink, radio. That's all I wanted to do. And as radio shifted, I had to shift. And it's just so funny that sometimes things shift back to you. And really, the magical part of this all, and why Patreon is going to be such a valuable asset to all of what I'm doing, is it's a great supportive space. That's for one. But also, I really came alive and got more invigorated with Randomly with Ronnie Jr., which was my first, coming back into the podcast space. That was the first thing I did. And I realized one big difference is, back in the day, your only goal was to try to get booked for a radio job or a TV job. And it was really about using your voice, or if you were on camera, your on camera presentation. What I'm learning now, or learned, is I couldn't believe how excited Randomly with Ronnie Jr. began to sort of fill my soul, and that's to say there wasn't really resources at the beginning. Now there's some sponsorships in and out or whatever, and things are feeling really good. This is why we're here at Patreon. We're trying to grow even more. Like, it really is a journey, and like, we're here on this journey. But it was when I started to learn, like, oh, okay, I'm not just using my voice for this product, but I'm also using my creativity. I'm also using my producing skills, and not even just technical, but just all of the stuff I've been doing. These industries are tough, man. These industries are just, you are valuable one day and not the next. And that's also, no harm, no foul there. Things just go, things are always being changed, or trying new things, right? So there's nothing wrong with it, but it's like, what an experience to now know that you could bring it all to your stuff. Like, suddenly I'm now not working for trying to be good for a radio station. I'm just trying to be good for myself. And the fact that anyone is so interested in seeing my Patreon, glow, and see my own glow up, like, that's cool to me. It's like those moments where you could look back and you're like, oh my God, do you remember the first episode? Like, whoa, the lighting was bad. The microphone was bad. And, it's always going to excel. But I think we're at a really fun time. And like I said, I mention all of these different things because it is special to me. And yeah, I mean, I get a smidge emotional to talk about, like, I guess I'm back. I'm back. I always thought I'd be a great broadcaster. You do have to age, you have to grow within what your original goals were. But you look at people like Regis Philbin. He had a career that was so strong, but he bounced around from market to market to market when he was younger, and then like one thing hits sometimes. Things will always be different. There isn't even really that much of a need for a show like that. But what if I produce a show that's similar and get to work with a peer that makes sense to me? Like, you really, it's I guess the world is our oyster on some levels. And if you like what I'm doing, that's great. I am making the show. I say it a lot. I'm making the show that I want to see. I don't want to be fooled with clickbait. I don't want to be fooled with like a silly game. I don't want to be fooled with the flash in the pan, shocking news. That's not shocking, but you're just trying to get the algorithm to really like show some movement. That's where we're at in broadcast, but that's not where I'm at. Like, I give it to you and I give it to you good. Like, I'm a real radio guy. Like, I'm a real radio personality. Like, I'm going to get busy. I always get busy. And I feel, here's the last thing. I feel like we're never really allowed to like be proud of certain things. We're like supposed to turn ourselves down, but like, turn myself down? Why? No, if I worked hard for something, I should turn myself up, and I should know that I've earned, I've earned something within the space. Sure, there's things I want to do. I've done some writing, not a lot, but some. I would be a little less confident in talking about my writing, although I love it. Acting is something I've always sort of wanted to do, and I've done a bunch of improv classes, but never really had the nerve to do to step into the world of acting. But it's crazy because now I'm at an age where you sort of should maybe give up that dream. But no, I'm now like, no, no, I'm not giving up that dream. I'm going to be successful in radio. I'm going to be successful in my writing, and I'm going to be successful on some level, even if it's more of a green experience in the world of acting. So, I think this is what it is. Randomly with Ronnie Jr. is not just a podcast. It's kind of where I'm at in my life. So thank you for supporting the Patreon, patreon.com/randomly with Ronnie Jr. The hashtag is #randomly with Ronnie Jr. And I think it's been fun. I think it's been random, but I think sort of, gosh, I don't even know how to say it. Like, what you're going to get. A lot of my interests make sense. Obviously I love to talk about reality TV, pop culture, but like health and wellness, there's just so much, and this is just the beginning. So if you love sort of the way things are already going, supporting, I just feel like can be so much stronger. So this is just really cool to me. That is it. And take it easy. And thank you for the continuous support, because this career has been going for a long time. Not long money just yet, but it's been going for a long time. And I feel good about that. I feel proud about that. Sometimes that's what you have to go through. So yeah, that's about it. All right. Talk to you later.